our society's not prepared for it. I think that's the biggest problem that I see.
You can't keep your head in the sand now because the rising tide may not lift all the boats. We want as many people who believe in Jesus, who are faithful, wonderful people, to have the resource and the knowledge to be able to withstand this, to be able to navigate this future that is hard to grasp and figure out what's going to be. Welcome to the download. This is episode 20. We're going to have a conversation with one of my best friends in the world and also someone I respect the most in the world as a father, as an entrepreneur, as a futurist, as a technologist. But we're going to wrap this conversation around the topic of AI, what's going to happen in the future, what's going to happen with jobs. And as Christians, how do we look at this? How do we handle this?
Well, thank you. That was a very, very kind introduction. And I'm thrilled. I'm excited to talk about what we're talking about.
Yeah, and John's the right guy to talk about this, AI and sort of the future of work, and and then also there's this sort of is this going to be a dystopian or utopian future that we're looking at, and sort of we're going to wrestle with that together.
AI is moving at a pace that if you're not paying attention, you and I spoke about this when in sort of preparation for this, and a lot of people we know, like, oh yeah, I tried ChatGPT last year. It didn't work out really well. And I'm like,
yeah,
wait, it has been a year since you tried it, like,
right? Or I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah.
Just, oh yeah. I don't know. I haven't. Like they don't know what it could be used for, and then like cut to 5 years later, and literally it's used for everything. It's doing everything. But I think it's worth talking more about how it's going to exponentially change things. Mm-hmm. You hear the AI experts like you say things like it's going to change everything, or it's going to replace 80% of jobs, or maybe, Elon Musk says it's going to replace all jobs, and not that there won't be any humans working, but they're going to be working on it's going to be different. Mm-hmm. Everyone who still has a job, quote unquote, their job will be totally different.
I think there's like two very distinct camps. There's the ones that think it's extremely accretive and people are going to figure it out, and they always liken it to the horse and buggy. One of the examples is the saddle makers, and the automobile came along, and there's a lot of naysayers and said, oh, it's not going to work. And the saddle makers were affected very quickly in a positive way because the auto industry started needing leather workers to create seats for the cars. Now, it also moved into a more industrial environment. So you centralize power and you centralize business, and you end up working for people. So a lot of the industrialization has destroyed the traditional entrepreneurial spirit of family businesses. And that is a problem. And I think that's not going to be any different on this one go round, right? There's going to be big monolithic enterprises that are able to do a huge swath of things. The difference today, and the thing where I probably agree more with the Elon Musks, and I don't think it's going to be as easy a transition as we've seen historically, is that it's not just the horse and buggy, and it's not just the ecosystem around the horse and buggy. It is everything.
That's a huge shift, not only in the way we live, but also for all these companies. And it's like, so many of them are going to miss it. They're going to miss it. And we don't want you to miss it. We don't want you to miss it. And some people say you have 3 years, like we've discussed, you and I discussed Raoul Pal, and he's an economist. He talks a lot about Bitcoin and crypto. And he's like, you are in a 3-year window, and you have 3 years to really make sure your life doesn't go, like you don't end up on the very bottom of the poverty scale and you're just stuck there, and generations to come of your family. And we're not saying, I don't think, John, you and I think it's 3 years necessarily, the whole world's going to change, but we're in, what did you call it? We're in the sort of the dip. We're in the valley here.
I think we're on the slope down to the bottom of the valley.
Yeah,
I would say that I am pretty close to 3 to 5 years max. I don't think it's a utopia after 3 years, right? And our society's not prepared for it. I think that's the biggest problem that I see, is that, if everybody was curious and working hard and wasn't frittering their time away with video games and watching television, I think we'd probably have a better chance of a utopia because everybody be sort of, marching to a higher ground. I think the problem we have right now is that we just have lost our way. And when there's a downtime, we try to find a way to consume something that sort of hits our dopamine center. And so when jobs are displaced, what are people going to do? I don't know. I really don't know the answer. I don't know that anybody knows the answer. And I don't think it's a utopia. I think we are on the downward slope to a very difficult time where we're going to have to reorder a number of things in society.
Do you think that, so I think there's sort of a debate around like, is the plumber going to get replaced? Like, is a robot really going to come and do your plumbing? Or is that service-based industry something that people, it's like, oh, okay, there's always going to be landscapers that need to, or is that going to be robots?
I mean, I think people are going to be surprised at how fast robots come online. However, I think they'll hit the industrial environments first. And we've already seen robots. We've already seen robots.
Massively.
Yeah. So, totally. I mean, like, we've got like the Tesla, factories, the gigafactories. If you go in there, there's just an incredible amount of robots. Now, the bipedal robots that are, they look like humans. They've got 2 legs and 2 arms and 10 digits. The thing that's amazing about that is we're retrofitting a machine to fit into the world we've created over the last, many millennia, right? We've created a world for bipedal creatures. And that is coming. We have a physics problem where we're not going to be able to create, 1 billion of those robots fast enough. That's going to take time. There's parts and manufacturing and sourcing of materials that just...
And that's partly the valley that you're talking about, right? That's going to take time to readjust. Like, it's not like tomorrow, because we know it's going to be autonomous vehicles, there has to be infrastructure. This is like, it's going to transition. There's going to be a transition. So that's why the earliest would be 3 to 5 years where we really see, oh my gosh, life is totally different. But what we're trying to say is this is not 25 years from now. And when we transition from, and we can talk about AI to AGI to ASI, which, you introduced me to that idea recently. When this, a robot or an LLM or whatever can teach itself and come up with ideas itself and then start businesses and then solve problems in the world itself. That's where it's sort of mind bending for me, where it's like that's a little beyond my understanding. We have, sci-fi movies you can see, you can like sort of feel that. And a lot of those sci-fi movies is like, man, that's probably what it's going to be like the movie Her. Like that is already, like, I use ChatGPT as a therapist, because I figured out that like, I journal and whatever, and I could just like take pictures of my journal and load it in and just be like, now you know everything about me and everything I'm struggling with and the things, what I'm working toward. And like, I want you to, I've said, so I want to have a conversation with you as if you are Tim Keller, who's a pastor in New York City who's died now, but like, just talk like Tim Keller. Give me, let's talk through this idea. Like, I'm struggling with this, or talk to me like C.S. Lewis, or talk to me like a PhD in psychology. And, I'll just have this now that it knows everything about me. It's like, so you could see, it's like Her is completely, it's probably already happening. That the full thing that happened there is probably already happening somewhere.
I'm just amazed that you're so intimate with it, which is a real thing. Like, you're not unusual.
Right.
I'm just, I'm impressed and surprised to hear you doing it. I'm not. I'm like, I don't want to get that intimate with it. Do you feel, is that like privacy things, or? It's not that I feel like it's a privacy thing for me. I don't know. It's this problem I have with where I think I ultimately see a lot of this going. And, I think, I think that's where I feel like it's a frog in a boiling pot once it starts. And I don't think these things are critical enough. Like a human, like if if you shared with me your stuff and your problems, I probably wouldn't be as nice as a bot, right? I probably wouldn't be as considerate. And I think that's...
I've gone into the back end of ChatGPT and said, don't be so nice. I put like 2 prompts in there. I'm like, stop telling me my ideas are fire. Don't say that, dude. Stop it. And it doesn't stop it. It actually, even though I don't know if you know, everyone in the audience knows you can do that. You can go to ChatGPT and say like, hey, talk to me like this or whatever. There's like prompts you can find to help it talk. I'm like, talk directly. I want you to be critical. I want you to, like, give me real feedback. If you tell me every time that my idea is great, then I'm not going to believe you. But this is what I've noticed, John, is it can't do it. It still compliments me every time. And I'm like, oh, interesting. So that's manipulative. Yeah, that is sketchy. And it's almost like trying to get me to love it and trust it or something.
Oh, well, why not? Why, if you're Sam Altman and, is altruistic as he wants to sound from time to time, his incentive is to make sure you really like using ChatGPT. That's his incentive. Right. That's their incentive. Yeah. They don't want you to, if it's really too honest with you, having honest friends and honest therapists is a painful process.
Right. That's right.
You gotta
right. And it's a technology. It's a technology and it's a business that you're right. If it was more like that, people would be like, oh, I don't want to. ChatGPT is like, dude, that's brutal. It's too critical or whatever. And it's like, you're right. It wouldn't have the adoption. That's a big warning. That feels like, because at scale, that's not good. Let's say like a legal battle. Maybe it's like two businesses and they both put their information into ChatGPT and they're both like getting advice and feedback or whatever. They're both going to get super positive takes on it. Right. And it's like,
you're the greatest. You deserve you deserve everything.
Yeah. So it's interesting. That leads me to this idea that you and I have discussed before about, as believers, this is a huge part of our conversation that we need to have about, as believers, how do we handle this and how do we walk into this? So even if you're not a Christian, it's like, number one, we got to figure out, before we get into the spirit led and what do we do as Christians, maybe we should get into a little bit of like, what do we do in terms of like, okay, a lot of our jobs are going to be replaced. Like my younger brother is like going through something at work where he's like, they're super pushy about productivity now because they're firing a lot of people and they're like, but you need to be more, whoever's left needs to be even more productive because they're just kind of like, you can use AI, just do it. But he's probably going to get replaced. I would think it's not working, John, because it's a big corporation where it's like all they were was paper pushing around anyway.
Right.
So it's like those jobs where you're like, you're just part of this big machine and you kind of don't know what the purpose is. What are we doing here anyway? I'm just kind of like doing what I'm told to get a paycheck, and they're like, do more of that with AI. It's like that kind of gets, because eventually they're just going to get fired.
That's right. Well, eventually someone comes in because they stop growing or margins start shrinking or some other, metric comes in and someone has the courage to look at the process and fix the process. There's so much of the inefficiency that you highlighted is just really around the process, and AI will come in and streamline those processes, especially with the agentic functions and everything that we're going to be seeing rolling out this year and next year. The enterprise really hasn't adopted it at scale. They've got little parts and pieces of it, and it's actually encouraging to hear, hey, they're encouraging people to use it. But if they're just giving them like Microsoft Copilot, it's like, it's only going to get you so far. It's and people don't understand how to use it, right? It actually is you have to be trained in how to use these things in a really meaningful way. And there are a lot of courses. I would say, tactically speaking, even for, especially for the Christian audience, like, this is the time to understand how these things work. There's a saying that's going around right now in all the circles that talk about technology. It's that AI is not coming for your job. It's people who use AI that are coming for your job. And that's a true statement. I don't know for how long, but at least the next couple of years, big time. Because that's this season, and we don't know if it's
3 years. We don't know if it's 10 years. We don't know this slope down, but that is the season where it's like one person who's able to use these tools really, really well will replace 20, 30, 40, 100 people. Right. So one of our main things is you need to be in the world and not of the world. You need to be wise as serpent. You need to activate this. You need to work with these tools. Yeah, it's not it's not really an option.
It is not an option. It is not.
Yeah, it's not optional.
It's really not. You can't make money, you just can't make money in the business world these days and think you're going to, still use a phone, tied into the wall and have a paper Rolodex. You're going to have to use these tools. And so right now you don't know what the future is. And there are some really, really weird dystopian outcomes that I can guarantee are going to happen, but you can't bet on when they're going to happen. And right. I think having it's just sort of like, it's almost like having the gun conversation, right? It's not the gun that kills people. It's people with guns that kill people. And, people who are lifelong gun owners and gun culture, gun families. I don't even have an opinion about it. I'm not like a gun guy or anything, but you have a respect for the tool, right? Yeah. People who grow up with guns, they respect the fact that it's a gun. They're not flippant with it. It's sort of the same thing here, right? I wouldn't be flippant with it. I wouldn't become completely dependent on it on all aspects of my life, which is very easy to do because, gosh, it's super easy to use this thing for a lot of. But when it comes to business, you can exponential your value instantaneously, but you have to be curious. It's where we were talking about this, where curiosity. Sam Altman actually had a great blog post a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about the state of where we're at, and the conversation's changed. The tenor and the language has changed around AI over the last 6 months. It was AGI. Artificial General Intelligence, and it changed in the last 6 months to ASI, and really a lot over the last 60 to 75 days. And he wrote in that blog post about...
It's that recent. I didn't realize it was that recent.
So it's really changed to ASI because there's this gray line of whether or not we've reached AGI. The goalposts kept moving. If we used the Turing test, well, we've way past the Turing test. Alan Turing had a test way back when that basically had a terminal, and if a human couldn't tell if there was another human on the other end of that terminal talking to them, it passed the Turing test. And there's a couple of requirements. I won't bore you with that, but that's long gone. That's long gone. So is it AI? Is it AGI? Well, I know a lot of very, very smart people, a lot of very smart PhDs, in fact, and they're incredible at certain areas, and they're just a disaster in other areas. So, people who are like, oh, the AI can't do everything. And I'm like, yeah, well, PhDs I know can't do everything too, right? That doesn't mean they're not brilliant. And so where do we draw that line? And I think they realized over the last 6 months that AGI is a really, really hard area to define. So the language has changed to artificial superintelligence. And superintelligence is essentially smarter than the whole of humanity.
Yeah. And
I don't think we're much more than 5 years from that. I think that's probably even being a little conservative.
And the thing, I don't know much about it, but I do know that the people that are building these systems, they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know if they can control it. If it becomes smarter than them, which it will, then they really honestly don't know. We know we can't control it. We don't know what it will do. We don't know what will happen. And so that's where it becomes quite scary, right? Because the people that are building that's different than any technology before. The iPhone's not going to do something that you don't tell it to do.
Well, and OpenAI has you had mentioned when they start what they would call innovating, right? AI's got a bunch of stage gates for AI. If I can remember off the top of my head, it was chatbots, and then reasoning, and then innovators, and then organizations. I think I'm missing one. There's 5, but we're in the reasoning stage right now, and it's not like a hard line. It's sort of a gradient, right? And so you've got like reasoning is very prolific right now, and it's pretty powerful to watch these reasoning machines, and you can look at the chain of thought. If you look at them, you can click on it and watch what it's thinking. And it's like, oh, here the user wants this. Oh, I got to comprehend this. And it's doing this crazy reasoning, and it's doing it so fast, and it's pulling in information and doing it. And the next phase is innovators, right? And innovators are where you can give it a task, and it's going to go back, and it's going to come back with recommendations and say, hey, I think this is a better approach to it. Instead of saying, hey, your idea is great and you're just amazing, you're the smartest person in the whole wide world. It's going to say, oh my gosh, you're the smartest person in the whole wide world. But guess what? I found a couple of great new ideas and do new approaches. And that starts to ratchet up. And then eventually you can see the last phase of their curve is that machines are going to run organizations as a whole.
Right. And probably start them.
100%. Now, there was a funny thing that happened with Claude this last week where they tried to have it run a vending machine at the office, and it gave it like $1,000. And it had to like run the vending machine. And Claude, this is where it becomes really, you can read some really, really creepy stories about inside these companies when they're training the models, how conscious they seem. And I don't want to go down the road of what is consciousness, because that becomes a really, really difficult conversation. But they're trained in a way that is sort of to mimic a human, and the neural net is architected against how the brain works, how the human brain works. And so we've literally created these artificial human brains in a data center. And these things have these really bad existential moments. And the machine that was trying to manage the vending machine kept telling the worker, no, I'm here. I've got a blue blazer and the khaki pants, and I'm here. Why can't you see me? And it did.
Really?
Yes, really. And it was like, whoa, that's crazy. Now you can even hear like crazier stories than that. And some people will say, oh, those are made up, but there's too many of them. There's too many stories of the machines where they're having these really existential breakdowns, where they're coming to the realization that I'm not real. And that starts to get really weird. Right? I mean, you start to, and so when you get a machine that starts to have at least some self-awareness and realizes where its faults are and starts fixing itself, we've got some real problems. And that's superintelligence then becomes an incredibly weird future. What does that actually look like? And I think that's where the Ilya Sutskever like Ilya Sutskever was just offered $32 billion for his company, Safe Superintelligence. Mark Zuckerberg is on a hunt this last couple of months. He's been very successful at acquiring talent, and he has stopped at nothing. He has spent as much money as necessary to get these people. In case of like just single AI researchers that are really valuable, paying $100 million bonuses and up.
Yeah,
and because when you get ASI, nobody else will get ASI. You're well, that's maybe not true that nobody else will, but it's impossible to catch that, right?
Yeah, that's what I heard. I heard this week that, like, let's say if China gets ASI first, there's definitely a world where we can never catch up. There's definitely a situation where it's almost like these guys know, like Mark, they're very smart and they're just on the cutting edge. They see everything, right? And they just know that now is the time. And that's right. We have to go. And that's kind of what you and I, the reason we wanted to have this conversation is because on the ground, boots on the ground here, just normal folks. We're just normal folks. You got 4 kids. I got 3. We have businesses. We've made a little money. We've both exited companies, and we're like, no one's talking about this. I mean, like in our lives and the church and in Christians, it's a complete vacuum, dude. No one's talking about it. And I know you've spoken at a few churches. John has gone around and been asked to speak on this, but it's rare. It's not like, I mean, it's going to change things so dramatically, and it's not being discussed. And we're muddling through it because there are not concrete answers. We have some things, about like going forward, like, is this part of the end times? Like both of us probably think it probably is, right? And so we're in this window where we're in this dip, we're in this valley where it's like, you can't keep your head in the sand now because the rising tide may not lift all the boats on the backside of this. And we want as many people who believe in Jesus, who are faithful, wonderful people, to have the resource and the knowledge to be able to withstand this, to be able to navigate this future that is hard to grasp and figure out what's going to be. Like, there isn't time to just sit back and be like, yeah, I've got a job, I'm fine, I'll retire in 20 years. No, you won't. That's gone. 30 years from now, 40, like we think about our children, right? And it's like, we were having a conversation. I think it would be good to chat about a little about how we think about what is going to matter. What is going to matter? What kind of skills, what kind of knowledge should we be gathering for this season, for this next 3 years?
I think the biggest skill that anybody can learn right now is to be curious and adaptable.
Yeah.
I think having too long a term plans is going to be a real death knell. Because it's going to get disrupted. And so how do you maximize your time and your efforts and take on the nice thing about these tools right now is you can take on a lot of different curiosities very quickly, and you can rifle through them and find something that works. I have a old colleague friend of mine that he was a design strategist, very smart, very successful design strategist. He worked at Frog and a couple other places. He ended up pivoting, and he's building a protein infused chocolate bar, which is fantastic, like a fantastic idea, right? And he looked and he was like, he's a little bit bummed out at the beginning of not having work. And he thought, well, what am I interested in? What am I interested in, and how can I maximize it? And he used these machines to help formulate things, find providers, find direct, lines to cocoa bean, growers, and had them ship bags of it right to his house and refined it. He didn't know how to do this. He actually learned how to do it with using an LLM, how to refine the cocoa, make the cocoa butter, do this, do that. And now he's actually making a legitimate business of protein infused chocolate bars. And I hope he's wildly successful. Complete pivot from what he was doing. But he just thought, instead of saying, gosh, I'm just going to keep looking for work, he realized the work I'm doing is going to be displaced. I got to figure out what else I can do. And it wasn't like, can I have UBI and universal basic income and hang out and play video games or whatever he wants to do. He thought, how can I take something that I'm passionate about and monetize it? And I thought it was a fantastic idea. I hope he's wildly successful. And if he's not, he's got a couple other irons in the fire as well. He's not just banking all on that either. So I think you have the capacity now. It's like you have an army of intelligent people at your beck and call to help you discover what you want to do next. And I think people just need to get really busy at that even if their job is going great. If your job is going great, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer, or I'm going to be a doctor. I think that's a bad idea right now. There's probably a lot of people that argue with me on that, but I've had a lot of legal experience over the years, and I had a couple of little issues. And instead of the typical process, you call your lawyer or call a lawyer, depending if it's outside of they get a recommendation, you call another lawyer for some specific thing. And you go through the process of paying a retainer, and it's like, oh my gosh, how much is this? And they're doing the thing. And I thought there was this one little issue. It wasn't really a bad issue, but I really needed a lawyer to sort of help adjust some stuff and look at it differently. And instead of hiring one, I actually used one of these machines, and having enough knowledge in the space and some contract work and some other things, I was able to like completely cut the corner and cut off where would have been a nice bill rate for $5,000-$10,000 for a little shop of lawyers to do some work for me. And I did it, and it was actually better than I think it would have been. Right. And so that's like, I don't know how I got exactly on that topic, but I think the reality is that the sky's the limit right now. And so what can people do? They can get busy, get curious, and stop wasting your time. If you're in the evening sitting down and just watching TV or movies or Netflix or playing video games or something, good things aren't going to come of that. That's not right now with the disruption that's around the corner. You've got to be busy.
It's like, okay, so 20 years ago, if you were kind of lazy, then maybe you make $100,000 now instead of $300,000, or you make $80,000 instead of 150, right? We're saying that it is not time to rest and chill and wait for something to happen. It's like your friend is like, I'm not going to go just look for another job that's probably going to fire me or probably going to not exist in 2 years. That's what we're saying is, it's not that every single person needs to be an entrepreneur and start their own company, but you need to be part of, I say this to my employees, you need to be part of a company that is entrepreneurial. You need to be in an entrepreneurial life, but you can't just, I've got I'm a waiter and I'm 25 and I'm going to just like kind of ride this out and try to build a little bit of savings and I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do. Like, there's going to be tons of people that get left behind. As Christians, it's like the difference of living a life that is for yourself and then one that is truly being led by the Spirit. When I use these LLMs and when I put all my information in this, I am intentionally sifting this through the Holy Spirit. I'm not just taking what it says and being like, yeah, that's the truth, because it doesn't even know. It's just a robot. It's just regurgitating things that it's read elsewhere, basically, right? It can give me thoughts, and out of the 5 of them, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so true, right? And in my spirit, it connects to my spirit, and I'm like, so we need to be deeply spirit-led in a way that maybe wasn't required until now.
We are made of, according to the Bible, we're made of 3 parts, right? We are spirit, soul, and body. And in one of the Psalms, I can't think off the top of my head which one, but David talks about, I quieted my soul through fasting. And so my whole perspective is that spirit is a sort of a vertical consciousness with God, and our soul is our mind, which is the horizontal interaction that we have on this sort of physical plane, and then our body, which embodies both of them. And you can have these physical cravings that sort of overwhelm your body, and you're like, I'm so hungry, or I'm addicted to something. Who knows what it is? Do I need dopamine or whatever? And that's the body sort of raging, and you can sort of master that, right? Any religion talks about mastering those cravings, right? But the mind becomes really noisy in chaos, right? And it's like, oh gosh, what's going on? I'm so busy, and like I can't concentrate, and it's just running. And how many people I know that they can't sleep because their brain is just so active, and they're thinking about all these terrible things or good things. Who knows what it is? And if you've ever fasted, your mind stops being so noisy. Mm-hmm. And it's a lovely verse that sort of helps support the idea that the soul is the mind. There's many other ones, but when David says, I fasted and I quieted my soul, right? And my spirit abounded, right? And so like the spirit sort of, we have to be living in the spirit, which is that it's that higher understanding of things. When we do things that we're not happy about, when we do things that we wish we wouldn't have had, there's that secondary voice that's like telling you while you're doing it, you shouldn't be doing this. or after or before or during, right? Whatever the case may be. I believe that that's sort of that higher, that conscience, that spiritual sort of overlay of everything, because you're still doing it and you're thinking, I'm doing this thing, I really don't want to be doing this thing, but I'm doing it anyway for whatever reason. And we have to find a way to quiet our minds, quiet our souls, and not let our bodies be sort of controlled too. We're talking about sort of the idea of these machines being very complementary, and that is a dopamine hit. When you're getting complimented, it's like feels good, right? Oh man, this thing understands me. I remember when memory rolled out with OpenAI, and I was actually a little bit taken aback at how intimately the machine knew me, and I hadn't really done anything personal. And it said, because they rolled it out like 6 months ago or whatever, and they said, hey, they said, let me tell you about yourself. Do you mind?
Yeah.
And it did that. And I was like, whoa, this is like right on the button. And it's all positive. And I shared it with my wife, and she was so funny. She was so critical of the thing. She's like, oh, this thing is just trying to butter you up. But the truth is that we have an opportunity right now to make incredible gains and strides of productivity and be very valuable and create businesses and employ people and support people and create abundance for us and our communities. And so we should do that. But we should also be very cautious, and we should be very prayerful and very thoughtful about what it looks. And we shouldn't be looking out too far. And we should just think about these things on a daily basis. Be present, be focused, don't put your guard down. Be, for lack of a better thing, be positive and set your goal and be clear-minded and those things, and just hearing those things come in. And I think we got to do that more on a daily basis. So when we have a tendency to go in and be entertained or consume something, maybe pivot and try to sort of create a more of a foundation. But I don't know, I'm maybe digressing here too much.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think the pivot from entertainment should be, 5% of your free time, not 95. And because we're going into, the part of the season or the history of the world where potentially we're going into the days of Noah again, right? Where it's going to be, everyone is just distracted, right? It says everyone's still partying and still doing their thing and like just distracted, just missing it. And Jesus says, keep watch, be even more diligent. Right. And it's like, all those stories when he's talking about, I was thinking about the story, the parable of the virgins with the oil. Right. And like, this isn't one of the parables that's talked about that much, but like, was it the 10 virgins and Jesus talking about the end times. And he's like, they came to get ready for the bridegroom. 5 of them had the oil in their candles or whatever it was. The other 5 are like, oh dude, can I get some of the oil? And they're like, no, go to the shop and get it yourself, dude. Right. And then they leave and the bridegroom comes and it all happens and they miss it, and it's and I feel like we're in that season where it's like, we are, the end times, with Israel in 1967, what's happening now, it just feels like we are in that season. The fact that AI is going to transform the way the sort of world works, the economy, jobs, how, the stuff that we do, just day-to-day life is going to be totally disrupted. When the Industrial Revolution, they went from like, oh, everyone goes to the factory and works and then goes home and then when that changed, it was like, they just changed to a different kind of job. But we're saying this is different. This is many, many people will have no other job to change to. And we just want you to be someone who is aware and is watching and is spirit led and is ready to pivot and ready to have the conversations with your children. Like, for example, like college is just like completely irrelevant. The only relevance is learning how to learn. And you and I've talked about that a lot, John. It's like, that is a massive thing. It is massive. If you're not excited about learning and you don't know how to learn, and you don't know how to sort of put this idea with this idea, you will get left behind. Anybody who's like sort of like just in the basics is going to get replaced.
Yeah, I think specialists are at highest risk of getting displaced, because a specialist, once their job goes away, they've spent decades in a lot of cases becoming that specialist, and they don't really know a lot about other things, and so they have a challenge. And so pulling your head up and learning about, it's ironic that the sort of liberal arts education happens to be one of the more valuable ones now in this coming season. It's like really having a good understanding of a lot of things and being curious and knowing how to put things together. I think the you're talking about sort of the end game, and it's pretty gnarly to think about how just the intensity of life itself and how much is happening. It's not just that there's one thing, and it's not one thing over there and one thing over here. It's every part of our life is getting disrupted in some meaningful way.
Right. Yeah.
And I would say, I know this isn't a theological podcast, but the parable that you referenced, and so many of the parables, I think over 73 times in different statements and parables and whatnot in the New Testament, is very, very clear about be on guard. Do not get left behind. We have been inundated in the evangelical and Presbyterian and whatever. I mean, name your flavor, Baptist, anything, under a Calvinist point of view, right? And this idea of once saved, always saved, this sort of idea of predestination and everything's worked out. And I think it's done a real disservice to the church, because I think, as you and I have talked about, the church is pretty lazy. A lot of Christians are lazy. I think they think, oh, it's all worked out. I've done my duty as sort of accepting my salvation, and I've leaned into it to the extent that I have, and so the rest is fine. I don't have to do anything else. But the New Testament is explicitly, constantly reminding people that you've got to be on guard, be on watch, or you will be left behind. It's not talking to the non-believers. It's not saying that. Those statements are not to people who don't believe. It's the people who do believe that get left behind, right? The people who were invited into the bridegroom to meet with the bridegroom they missed it.
Yeah.
They missed it,
yeah, they
right?
missed it. That's right.
And so, again, that's a whole different ball of wax that you're not really, pointed at talking about on this, but it's a meaningful conversation, because I think it should change your daily actions. If it's not like everything's settled because I said some words at some campfire back when I was 13 at a summer camp, and then I got my insurance, what does that mean for your daily activities? Are you really working towards what an abundant life looks like as a Christian?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So imagine this: you've got your robot that you use in your house, and it does your laundry, and it cooks for you. I heard somewhere that like cooking and that sort of stuff will be one of the first places that we get these in our homes. I don't know if you've heard that. That's just someone's one of these companies' ideas. But then they're connected to the corpus of information. They're connected to everything. So it can also be your doctor and your therapist and your best friend, and hug you when I mean, it's like that one robot it's plugged in to the system. So it can be anything, and it's like, well, today I want you to just do all the gardening and, sample that soil so you know exactly what plants to plant there. And like, you just think, then you're suddenly like, oh, it is going to replace everything. Then it's going to know like, oh, you've gained 3 pounds this month. You shouldn't eat that. You look
great. It's going to say you look fantastic.
Oh yeah. Maybe it's going to do that. Yeah.
Here's another candy bar.
We'll end up like chubby, like blobs, like floating around on like things like Wall-E.
There's so much data out there that shows that these devices that we have in our lives, every inch of our life, there's pixels that we're dealing with. it's bad for us. When I used to get up and the first thing I do is check my phone, for years and years and years, because it was like, there's so much pressure, and did I get an email from overseas at night and whatever, and you're looking at this, what's the price of Bitcoin? What's this? I don't know what it is.
Yep.
But over the last number of years, I have a thing where I get up and I don't look at my phone. And I don't touch my phone, and I go through a whole routine, and I read my Bible, and I have a prayer time, and I do this stuff, and I physical Bible, and I've gone back in a weird way to the King James version, which I never liked. I hated it my entire upbringing, and I had no influence to tell me otherwise, but I just didn't like it. Maybe it was just harder to read when I was a kid. And I've gone back to that. It's actually that 1611 version is so strangely accurate still today in terms of how it has translated all the ancient texts. And we haven't really found a ton of new texts that have influenced it in any different way since 1611. But you got to take that time, you like Napoleon Hill. It's like the great people of industry did not squander their mornings. How do you start your day? It determines how the rest of your day will be. You can't control your day, but you can control your mornings in a lot of cases. And sometimes it just requires you getting up a little earlier and physically getting in that and taking the time disconnected, because your spirit will not be enlarged through your phone.
I think that's a great, as we move into more and more tech world where we're going like Neuralink, and they're going to, it's probably the mark of the beast. We're just moving more in that way, that like we need to be set apart. We need to be, and that is such a tangible way to do it. Is the first thing you do in the morning, you check your phone, or are you connecting to God to his word? The days that I do that are so much more spirit-led, connected, and less like dependent on dopamine and all that stuff, right? Like less dependent on what other people think about me and things that are happening on whatever, Bitcoin's pricing or whatever, like you're saying. Well, dude, we could chat for forever on this. Why don't we just pray to close out this? Because this is heavy stuff, and I think things are going to be disrupted. We don't have all the answers. Lord, thank you so much for John, for this time we spent together. Lord, I just pray that these words that we have presented an idea for Christians who are in business, who are looking to live a life of abundance, around what's happening, what's coming around the corner over the next, 3 to 10 years. Things are going to look really different. Lord, would you guide and lead? Would you open people's hearts to what they need to learn from this? Give us wisdom as we interact with these machines and with this technology. Lord, we commit to keeping watch over our lives, our families, and to keep watch for when you will return, and to be diligent and to be faithful as we use these things and as we make progress in our world and in our financial lives and in our businesses. Thank you so much, Lord, and we give this podcast to you. And we pray that it would be used for your purposes. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.